Hi, friends. Thanks for listening to the Naturally Noelle show today. I wanted to take a minute to introduce you to our guest, Jay Lippy. Jay's background is in leadership development and helping individuals and teams learn how to communicate effectively, function efficiently, and reach maximum productivity. He is a proud U.S. Navy veteran, ordained minister, published author, past president of the Rotary Club of Tampa, motivational speaker, an AACC and ICCA certified life coach, is the regional CEO for the People Map system, owns and manages a medical video production company, and thrives on helping leaders and professionals reach their full potential personally and professionally. I really think you're going to enjoy our conversation today. Here we go.
You're listening to the Naturally Noelle show, brought to you by Noelle's Naturals, all natural products that really work. And now, please welcome entrepreneur, wife, homeschooling mom of 4, and founder of the Noelle's Naturals brand of products, your host, Noelle Talley.
Well, welcome to the show today, guys. We have a treat. Our guest today is Jay Lippy, who is a business owner and old fart and happens to be my dad. Welcome to the show, Dad.
Well, thank you, honey. It's good to be here.
So today I asked you to come on, and we are going to talk today about leadership and entrepreneurship, and particularly raising kids that are entrepreneurs, because you have done that times 3. And, that didn't come out of nowhere. You had a lot of experience in leadership, and that was kind of a really big deal for us growing up and a really big part of how you raised us. So where did that come from? How did you end up kind of in the leadership sphere?
You know, everybody gets to where they are. Sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's accidental, and sometimes they just don't even know why they got there. And I think early on in my own childhood, growing up, I was the youngest of 13 kids. We had stepbrothers and sisters. We had half brothers and sisters and full blood. It was really pretty much potpourri. We were all thrown together and expected to be a family. And being the youngest of all those kids, I often felt like I was just kind of hanging out there. So I always had 13 other opinions, not only my stepfather and my mother telling me what I should do, what I should be. And crazily inside, I always wanted to be something different than what I saw, what I heard. Didn't do well in school because a little bit rebellious, a little bit not just buying into the system. So I think entrepreneurship almost is stirred out of a heart that might be a little bit rebellious and wanted to do things differently, whether it's just pure rebellion or it's just a heart that says, I don't want to be like other people. So I think ingrained early on in me was a fighter spirit to be different and to do things the way that I thought they should do.
So how did that end up working out in your work life as you kind of moved through finding your path and your career and jobs and all of that?
I think maybe I had to learn to rid myself of rebellion. And that was kind of in my heart. And it cost me several times over my lifetime. I had to learn how to work hard. And what I realized maybe in my mid 30s is that I I was rebelling against the wrong things. And so I had to learn how to work hard. I had to learn how to study. I had to learn how to be prepared, mostly because I was married and had 3 children, and I just couldn't let my crazy heart, just snap off and do things. But it didn't replace the fact that I always thought that there was a different way, a better way of doing things. And so as I then went back to school, I got my GED, I went back to college, got my associates, finally got my bachelor's degree, and then probably into my early 40s started really getting certificates, getting specialized training that would help me in leadership. It allowed my leadership to blossom. And but it probably took me into my 40s before I learned the difference of being creative and entrepreneurial and being stubborn and maybe just being too rebellious for my own sake.
I wonder where I get that from.
Yep.
So, at what point did you really start to kind of trickle this down into your parenting with us?
Well, I don't really think that I thought of myself as a leader until I was 18 and in boot camp in the Navy, where other people noticed immediately a leadership quality that I didn't realize I had. And so from the very beginning of being on my own, I began to thrive. And it was the notice of that, like, oh, maybe there's something here. And what teachers, what the school system, the public education said was bad, and they tried to get out of me, all of a sudden, as an adult, people saw value in. And what's ironic now that I'm in my 50s and now in my 60s, people pay me money to come speak to them about leadership and management process when all along early as a child, they were telling me I was wrong. They were telling me that those things would never get me and that get me ahead and it would not work. And here, people now pay me money because the way I think is different than the system that's in place. If that makes sense.
So, and then let's talk about that a little bit, because I feel like at a very young age, you really pinpointed that leadership quality in me. And you really encouraged that, which in a world where women are not encouraged to be leaders, you really saw that as a value. And maybe part of that is because of how that was sort of frowned upon in you. At what point did you start seeing those qualities in me and realizing that I would do better in a situation where I was a business owner? Because at a very young age, you were encouraging me to start a business when I grew up. Even actually before I grew up, when I was little, you started encouraging that in me.
I think it comes down to freedom. And I mean, look, everybody has a different personality type, and there are those individuals who are phenomenal team players that don't mind other people telling them, look, here's the structure, here's what you should do, and they function well inside of that. I don't. I'm about freedom. I'm about making my own choices, kind of pioneering my own way. And so freedom can look um, different to a lot of different people. Success can be defined differently for a lot of people. I don't define success as in having a lot of money. You have to have a baseline. You have to be able to pay your bills. You have to be able to pay your mortgage and do some of the things that are important in life. So, money is certainly important, and success does bring that. But I define success as being happy. And for me, it was about freedom. And so, for you and your two siblings, what I wanted for you was the freedom of choice, the freedom to pursue those things that would really make you happy. And so along with that comes a lot of hard work. It's a lot of risk. There are a lot of factors that go into it that people sometimes don't want to embrace. But with hard work, with educated risk taking, comes great freedom that you can then dictate to your life. These are the things that are important to me, and these are the things that I want to do. So that now, here I am, my mid 60s, looking back. Um, I'm so thankful that I took this route because I don't think I would have ever been satisfied or happy working for somebody else my whole life.
Yeah, I think you probably knew that I wouldn't either. And I think that's important, as you know, most of our audience is moms, to talk to that mom and how she can see that in her child at an early age and how she can foster that and encourage that in them. I mean, for starters, gosh, was I 9 or 10 years old? You were playing basketball leagues at the YMCA, and you gave me a business loan, and you said we need a concession stand, and it's going to be you. And you took me to Sam's Club, and we got some cans of soda and some bags of chips and some candy, and you gave me a little loan and sat me up at a table, and every Wednesday night I would sit there and watch you guys play basketball, and I'd sell snacks to the guys, and eventually I paid back my loan and did it all season, and did that for a little while and had my own little business. And that was kind of That wasn't my idea. That was your idea. And you said, we're going to do this. And why did you do that?
Well, it's probably going to sound cheesy, and if it does, it does, but I really mean it. As a father, I thrive, and there's nothing that satisfies my soul deeper than knowing that my kids are better than me. And to know that my wife has more degrees than I do because I helped make the way. For me, that just brings me great joy. And so, setting you up for success to chase your dreams, and as a dad, it there were things that I thought were absolutely essential, and I was going to make sure that were consistent, whether it was you or your brother or your sister. But I wanted your personality, your heart, your dreams to come forward, because that's when you really put the hard work in. And every job has a grind. But when you are pursuing your dreams, you're willing to work through those grinding moments. But if you're trying to live out somebody else's dream, that can get really old. And so I think for me as a dad, just wanting you to do better than I did, but to do it through your dreams, not my dreams for you, if all that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And so let me ask you this, because you know which one of my children I'm talking about, but I have a child who is definitely strong willed and strong leadership qualities, and that's hard when they're 5. How do you balance seeing those qualities in a child and encouraging those, but also not letting that get out of control without breaking their spirit?
That's wow. And for the moms that are out there, how do you raise a leader? How do you do that without squelching it? Um, I think the one non-negotiable that I I thought was just ironclad was respect. You can't disrespect others. You can't disrespect your brother. You can't disrespect your mom. You can't disrespect your dad. You can't disrespect police officers. You can't disrespect a teacher. And so that for me was like the non negotiable. Then learning your child's heart and where they're leaning toward, you can kind of weave in there, allowing them to take ownership so that they feel like they're involved, but never compromising on, I know you're intelligent, I know you have your own ideas, but you have to respect the fact there's some authority over you. So as a parent, respect was the non-negotiable. Then the joy and the fun and the exploration and the adventure of discovering where your child's heart is, as they learn how to take ownership and develop and practice and fail and succeed in the things that they think they might want to try, and as they develop their own leadership style.
Yeah. I think one of the other things, too, that you and mom taught me and continue to teach me is partly that little bit of a rebellious spirit, which you guys both have. And I think we all have. But also just that desire to question everything and to never just take anything at face value and to never just see something and say, well, it's okay. Like, to always be improving and looking for ways to find different solutions to things. And that has really followed me throughout my life. I mean, not just in work and in business, but, as we look at what's going on, geopolitically and, with health freedom and just everything in the world, there's so many just lies out there. And you have to have a discerning spirit, and you have to have the ability to question authority. And that is something that I'm teaching my kids, is to question things. But that's also hard because then they question me and then they question God. And so it's, how do you build those foundations where you have that rebellious spirit and want to question things, but you also know where your roots are?
Well, there's a lot of open ended in there. It's a great question. But I kind of coined this phrase that if you haven't questioned your faith recently, your faith is probably pretty questionable. We are taught, here's the question, here's the answer, what's the next question? Unfortunately for me, I question why that's the right answer. And when you're not afraid of truth, you can question things with respect, especially if you're questioning a leader or somebody who is in authority over you. You can still question them, but you need to do it respectfully. But what questions do is hopefully bring you to truth. In my personal experience, when I have questioned the validity of the Bible, the validity of God, and I have questioned that, it has led me to truth. When I have questioned process and business, it has led me to truth. When I find truth, it brings security and it brings a level of peace to my heart so that I'm confident and I'm comfortable. Therefore, when people question me, it's not a personal affront. It's an opportunity for me to share what I've discovered, what I've learned. In our society, questions are not nice things anymore. Somehow, if you ask anybody a question, they take it so personally. I think that might be because they're insecure and maybe they haven't done all the homework to find out what the truth really is. I'm after truth. Therefore, I welcome questions, and questions are a great exploration. They're a wonderful adventure. And the things that you learn along the way, other than the correct answer, just make you a well rounded person. So I love questions. I don't ever shy back from them because hopefully they lead you to truth.
Yeah, I mean, you guys were always really open with us questioning things. And I mean, you let us look at different religions when we were young, not too young, but when we were old enough to have some, you know, foundation in scripture because you believed that what is the saying that you say about the dollar bill, the counterfeit thing?
Oh, yeah. Well, at every bank teller, if you study every counterfeit dollar bill that's been out there and you memorize the millions that are there, and all of a sudden they come up with a new one, you get duped, you get fooled. So the goal isn't to memorize every single counterfeit. What they teach bank tellers, what the real thing looks like. Therefore, when you know the genuine dollar bill, any counterfeit is easily spotted. And I think that is true with our faith. That when there are, God has no grandchildren, and you can't live on my faith. You have to develop your own. And the only way you're going to do that is by asking questions. And I don't think God is afraid of questions. I think God loves it when we question him because then he can prove to us and show to us what truth really is. And once you know truth, you're able to recognize every false religion that's out there, and it brings a sense of security, um, and makes me secure in who I am as a person. It makes me secure in how to live my life. It makes me secure in asking questions. It actually even makes me secure in risking things because if I fail, who I am as a person isn't at stake. It was a venture that maybe it was the wrong idea. Maybe it was a horrible idea. Maybe it wasn't well researched. Maybe it wasn't the right time. Either way, it doesn't have any bearing on who I am as a person because I live in truth.
You know, that's actually a good point. I'm glad you brought it up because one of the things that I get asked a lot as a business owner from people that are considering starting their own businesses is, you know, weren't you afraid? Like, how did you just step out? And because I often, like, we just bought a farm, you know, like we do these crazy things and people are like, how did you do that? Weren't you afraid? Didn't you, you know, not have any idea how to do things? And I just don't have that fear. And I don't know what it is that you guys did that enabled that in me. I mean, one, just I think just having parents who loved me and having that foundation and that backbone that I always knew I could rely on you guys if things went belly up. But even as I've been older, I mean, and I don't rely on you guys as much anymore. I mean, it's a different role now, but I still have that. I think that's probably part of it, but there must have been something that you guys did intentionally that instilled just that fearlessness and all of us because we all are business owners, all three of my siblings, and we've all been kind of pretty gutsy and
Well,
putting ourselves out
your
there.
mother owns a business. I own a business. So all five of us are business owners, small business owners. What's interesting is you can't just jump out recklessly. Um, when when you actually left to go to college in California, and we were back here in Florida, I really encouraged your mom wanted to go back to school. And I thought that was a great thing. And so after you left for college, your mother went back to school, finished her bachelor's, her master's, and earned her PhD in marriage and family therapy. But she did that because we had a secure foundation which she could risk on. But I remember we were probably, oh, our late 20s, early 30s, and she at that point was a hairdresser and she worked in a salon. And she was thinking about launching out, starting her own business, and going independent. And it was horrifying for her. One, because your mother is a very systematic, very structured person where she doesn't like risk. And stepping out into this arena where you would make your own money instead of having a paycheck given to you each week was a huge risk. The fortunate thing for us is that I had a job and I was working, so she could take that risk. So we've kind of minimized that somewhat. But then ultimately, once then she was going, I left out and started my own business. And so there are times when you have to be patient and be calculated, and then there's other times you just have to jump off the edge of the boat and go for it.
So how do you get to that point where you're not afraid, where you trust yourself, where you believe that this is the right direction?
For some people, it's dissatisfaction that where you are is so unfulfilling. It so doesn't float your boat that you just know in your heart you're going to have to do something different. Sometimes it's like, if I don't try this, I'm going to explode. For me, it was often I, I knew the home that I grew up in and how truly dysfunctional it was, that I wanted something so different from that. And maybe what the three of you kids, don't realize is that um, our family kind of was a pretty big experiment. And just as you guys grew up in a home where you felt loved and secure, for your mom and I, it was the first time we lived in a house where we felt loved and secured. So there were many things that we were learning as adults, as parents, as husband and wife, that we never experienced, that we didn't know, and we weren't sure about. Our hearts just longed for something more, something better, something different. And so, as you guys were growing up and that became normal for you, it all of a sudden became normal for us. And so, we were kind of experiencing the same time this wonderful thing called being part of a family that no matter what, you knew that you were loved. And that, even as an adult, having never had experienced that, was pretty cool and fresh for us.
That's really cool. I've actually never heard you speak to that before. That's really neat.
Yeah, I mean, our family was an ointment to the wounds of my heart as well. My dad died when I was 4 years old. I never knew him. My stepfather was a wretched individual who beat us, abused siblings. It was not good in any way. And I think maybe the rebellion against that in my heart led to rebellion in almost every aspect of my life until where I finally quit high school as a freshman in high school, just because the only thing I knew was to rebel. I didn't know what I was rebelling to, I just knew what I was rebelling from. When I became a Christian, all of a sudden I realized what I was rebelling against and who I should be running to. And for me, my walk with Christ gave me a sense of belonging that I had never experienced in my life. And I just wanted that belonging to extend out into my marriage, that belonging to extend out into my children, and then for our home to be a launching pad for my children, that they would go chase life with a reckless abandon, but yet they weren't running from home, they were being launched from home, if that
Yeah.
the difference there makes sense.
There's a word that you used like a dozen times a day when I was a kid and still use. I hear you use it with the kids, and that's intentionality. Why is that word so important to you? Why do you use that so much?
So many times we do stuff and we're not even sure why we're doing it. And therefore, if it doesn't go correctly or if it goes badly, we don't know what to go back and evaluate. I mean, I am huge on evaluation. Um, if you do something intentional and you mess up, you can go back and say, okay, I did this, and oh, I see where I messed up there. But if you're not intentional, you can't go back and learn from your mistakes. On the other side of the coin, if you're intentional and you try to do something and you hit a home run, you also can go back to that and evaluate and say, okay, I meant to do this and I meant to do that, and I did that and I did this. Awesome, good job. I'm going to do that again. So intentionality brings to the forefront thoughtfulness, dreaming, planning, execution, and then when you're finished with it all, evaluation. And because it's not who I am as a person that's at stake, I can evaluate it with a brutal reality and say, that stunk, that was bad. Oh, what in the world was I thinking? Oh, holy cow, man, I hit a home run. Keep, reject, reject. But who I am as a person is never involved in it because it was only a business adventure.
Yeah. I don't remember you ever like directly telling me that, but that must have made it through somehow because I feel that way a lot. I don't feel like who I am as a person or my value or my worth is in whether I succeed or fail. It's whether I put, you know, my heart into it, whether I worked hard, whether I put out something that I really felt proud of. And if it didn't do well, then I either scrap it or I keep trying, but I don't crumble because who I am isn't bound up in that. Who I am is in Christ, and am I, a good wife, and am I a good mom, and am I loving and kind to the people around me. It's those relationships that really give me value, not my work. Although my work gives me a tremendous amount of fulfillment and excitement, and it's something that I really do identify with as a part of what I do, but it's not who I am.
Right. Well, when I think for me, that absolute security in my personal walk with Jesus Christ gave me such a unquestionable anchored foundation that to sacrifice for you guys to be what you wanted to be was a joy. It was a sacrifice. It was hard work, and you had to give up stuff, but there was a payoff in getting to see you guys chase your dreams that was far worth any of the hardship that we had to endure. And even with your mom going and pursuing her PhD, it was, I take great joy in the fact that my wife is smarter than me because I helped make that happen. I did that intentionally. And the three of you kids and watching you, with your businesses and succeeding at a great level, I love the fact that I had a hand in that. And so if I was insecure as a man, I would be jealous of my wife and probably resent the fact that she has better degrees than me. I would probably resent the fact that my kids make more money or have achieved things that I didn't achieve because I had to do XYZ. But that just hardly ever even enters my mind, if ever, because I'm thrilled for the success of those around me because that fills my heart with joy.
I think it bears mentioning that you did not have your own business until really the last 5 or 6 years. I don't know how long it's been, and because you all always worked, one or two or sometimes three jobs, whatever you had to do to, make ends meet and to keep us all, where we needed to be. And I think that's cool. Mom always had a business. She was always a business owner. I think she's probably even more rebellious than you. But and then also you did executive leadership coaching for many years,
Yeah.
and you were coaching, I mean, some of these companies were multi-million dollar, executives of companies, and you've always been around it, and you've always been the one kind of cheerleading everyone and like coaching everyone and teaching everyone, and now it's finally your turn. Now you're in it.
Yeah. The the things that go on internally, whenever I would walk out on a stage or I would go into a different city to do a training or a lecture, there was there was always a little part of me, excuse me, who was that 16-year little boy with teachers telling me, "You're wrong. You're too rebellious. You're never gonna." Matter of fact, when I signed out of high school as a freshman in high school, I had failed 3 times getting there. My guidance counselor told me, "Jay, you're a loser. You've always been a loser, and you'll probably always be a loser. And you leaving school today is probably a good thing." And my mom was really mad. I just kind of blew it off because I was so used to hearing that kind of garbage. But I still, even today, when I go out to speak to companies about leadership and communication, every time I go to walk out there, it's kind of like a little laughter in my heart saying, I was right. I was right all
Mm.
along, because the things that I was thinking about, even as a 16-year-old, which is what I said earlier in this conversation, people now pay me money to hear what I have to say. I just needed to learn how to harness that, to learn how to polish it up, to become educated, to become well rounded, so that I was able to actually articulate the thoughts that were rolling around in my head from being a little boy. But there's still that little boy, even though I'm 64 now, that little boy still runs around in my heart. And I still get a kick out of whenever I'm going out to speak. You know, I was right. I was right all.
Mhm. There's so many parts of that strike me. One, just the power of our words and how they can stick with people. And you never know when you just say a mean thing, how that can really affect someone. Also, just how God is so faithful to use things like that, that he took what that jerk teacher meant for evil and used it for good and as a catalyst in your life and as something to motivate you that no, that's not who I'm going to be. That's not true. I reject that.
Well, even when I guess, holy cow, we've been, I guess, in our early to mid 30s when we started homeschooling. And I remember someone asking me who I thought I was, that I would dare take on the challenge of homeschooling. And I would like to say it was all me, but the truth of the matter is your mother did a lot of that. And I kind of was the encourager behind the scenes, but she did a lot of the work, which I'm so thankful for. But that taking the risk to homeschool was about pursuing excellence. And Colossians 3:23 says, "Do everything heartily as unto the Lord." And that means that heartily means, it's the Greek word suke, and it means with absolute breathtaking, the last breath of life excellence. And so, looking at the three of you, thinking how much wasted time is spent at public school, how much more time could we take advantage of pursuing our dreams and learning about things that are real life, instead of scenarios and situations that are never going to come to fruition? And so when we took on homeschooling, it was about pursuing excellence. It was about pursuing a route for the three of you to not have to live through um, all the "I wish I could have" or should have's. Instead of going, nope, let's chase it. Let's pursue excellence, and the whole time, honor the Lord while doing it.
Well, and homeschooling was a huge part of what I think allowed all of us to, have that freedom, have those hours in the day where we could have businesses. I mean, I had a business when I was 15 years old, and I had the time and space to do that. And you guys weren't afraid of me being grown up or mature. You weren't afraid of me getting out there and you know being in this grown up world, because you had raised me to have a good head on my shoulders and to have wisdom and to have discernment and to be able to function in that space. I mean, I worked with all kinds of adults who had no idea I was a teenager. They just thought I was an adult because that's how I presented myself with that confidence, and you let us do it. I think other parents might have thought that was crazy, but you didn't. Why not?
Well, I think that there could be a recklessness of allowing a child to take on more than they can. And you never want to do that for your child. On the other hand, I reject much of what society says about adolescence. We've so, I think, stymied excellence in children by saying you're an elementary student, you're a teenager, you're this. Why not? You're a real live breathing thinking human being, and although you're only 9 years old and I shouldn't expect more from you than a 9 year old is capable of, I'm going to expect the absolute best of you as a 9 year old. And so the more I think a child embraces of what might be possible if they were to try, all of a sudden it's not I can't be a business owner because I'm a teenager. It's how big of a business can I own being a teenager, realizing there's some parameters and some things I need to be careful of here. But it's the joy of trying, even if you fail. The joy of risking it to saying, I want to really just risk this. And you do, not with reckless abandon, but with a sense of understanding and research so that you're not encumbered by being a 6 year old or a 10 year old or a 35 year old. What you're encumbered by is your capacity to be what you think you might want to be.
Yeah, and it's cool that I had the opportunity to try out a few different businesses as a kid and as a teenager while I was in your home and while I was still there, under your guidance, because there wasn't as much at stake. So I could test out those boundaries and I could see what I was capable of and really just learn through experience. I mean, they don't have classes like that in public school. I mean, maybe I don't know, maybe there's some areas in the country that have better programs for kids, but nothing like that real world experience.
Well, the one thing about adults that I learned is that whether they're a surgeon or a federal judge or a bricklayer, they have a heart and a passion for what it is they're doing, and they've worked hard. They love to talk about what they do for a living and how awesome it is to get a young person side by side with somebody like that so that they get to hear the passion, they get to hear the hard work, they get to hear about the grind and the risk taking and the satisfaction of having accomplished something because you worked hard at it. There's nothing better than to expose a child to various adults who want to talk about what it is they do for a living so that a child can understand firsthand what they like and what they don't like.
So I want to kind of touch a little bit on the leadership too, because it's funny. We kind of joke about how you think everyone should be a leader, and we're like, well, who are you going to lead if everyone's leading? We need some followers too. But leadership is really important to you, but not everyone is a leader, and not everyone has those natural born leadership skills. However, as a mom, you find yourself in a position as a leader, whether you want to be or not. You are leading these little kids, and that doesn't come easily to everyone. How would you speak to that mom who is maybe a little bit more meek or just more gentle spirited and not, that strong leader type?
Well, when we say leader, we might our minds might race to, these mega million dollar businesses where the leader's out there taking names and he's charging international deals. And he's like, I could never do that. I'm not a leader. But to your point, if there's anybody that's looking at you, if there's anybody that's following you, meaning if you're a mother or you're a father, you're a leader. Somebody is looking up to you, and what are you doing? How are you doing it? Should I do what you're? That's what a leader does. And so, for the most part, it's not whether or not I am a leader. It's accepting the fact that everybody is a leader because they lead in some form or fashion in some capacity of life. It is hard. And so over the years, I've, it's come at great expense, sometimes financially, sometimes by failure. Uh, but you learn and you become those things. I mean, nobody is good at everything. And so you learn how to bring people into your life in the areas where you're not good so that your weaknesses don't cost you. But the process of leadership, you have to pay the price to do the homework. You have to study. You have to risk. You have to try. And sometimes you make mistakes and sometimes you don't. But when you're intentional about it, like we were talking about earlier, you can go back and evaluate. And because who you are is not at stake, therefore, learning to become an effective leader isn't a personal drama. It's a personal adventure.
So, what would be your final words of wisdom to all the middle-aged moms out there who are my my demographic, who are listening, who are either a hoping to raise young leaders and entrepreneurs or hoping to become an entrepreneur themselves?
Wow, there's so many different bunny trails we could take with that. I would, I guess, maybe start asking questions. And one of my grandsons, who's 24 years old, he and I were having a conversation the other day, and he asked me some very pointed questions. And my answer to him, well, my hope is that you learn how to be honest. And most of us don't do any introspection. We are not comfortable with the voices we hear inside of our head. I have an associate's degree in music. I was a vocal major, and what I noticed early on is that most vocalists were very difficult because if they sang a bad note, the note was physically coming out of their body, and they sang a bad note. Where I noticed that instrumentalists, guitarist or saxophone player, would practice scales over and over again. If they hit a wrong note, they go back and repractice it. Where a vocalist, because the note was coming out of their body, they go, oh, and they'd shy away. As I learned how to sing using my voice as an instrument, it allowed me to examine the good notes, the bad notes, until I became very comfortable with the tone that I was hearing. And so by introspection, what happens is that you do the hard work of asking honest questions about what is my motivation here? What am I really seeking here? And if the honest answer is because you're selfish, well, then be honest about it and work on that. But it's not until you begin to question the inner parts of who you are that you're able to say, I like that note. That note has the right tone, it has the right pitch, it has the right quality. And you hear that note and you're going, I like that. I think that's true with introspection. Is that when you ask yourself enough questions and you're honest about them, you can say, yeah, that is me. That is the honest answer. And therefore, I'm going to pursue that. And I'm totally comfortable with that. So if you're thinking about entrepreneurialism, excuse me, introspection, ask hard questions, learn how to be honest. Therefore, you're not taking an uncalculated risk. You're on an adventure for chasing your dreams, because who you are at the core of your personality, you take that with you into your marriage, into your being a mom, or into being a business leader. But if you can learn how to be honest about who you are in Christ, and if you're not a Christian and you don't have a religion, then you need to find somehow, some way to be honest about who you are and who you're not, so you don't take unnecessary risks. I mean, if that's kind of a little bit of a rambling, hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, and then what about as you're seeing these traits in little ones coming up, what would you say, having raised three, strong leaders and business owners, what would you say to the mom who sees those traits in that child?
Wow. Um, if you don't know, find somebody who does. If you're not sure, find somebody who is, and learn how to partner with them until you learn how to be sure and you learn how to be confident. When we were homeschooling, math was not my strong suit, but we had friends that were engineers. And so when it came to algebra and trigonometry and geometry, we found somebody who was good at stuff that we weren't, and we allowed them to have an influence. And so nobody's good at everything. So find the people you can trust that are good in the things where you're not, and either have them do it, pay them to do it, partner with them to do it until you learn how to do it. And eventually, then you can become those things. So if if you have a child that is really gifted in an area where you're not, well, this isn't about you. This is about your child. Find somebody who's good in that area so that they can begin to explore.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a homeschooling dad, and I don't remember exactly the way he said it, but basically he said, I don't have to be the one that reaps the harvest of the seeds that I've sown. And he's like, sometimes you feel like, you've been going over a concept with your child, in homeschooling, and then they go to a homeschool co-op, or they're with, a tutor or somebody else that's not you. And that person says it just a different way. And suddenly they get it. And you're like, I put in all the work to teach them that. Why did that person get the credit? He's like, I realized it doesn't have to be me. He's like, I'm fine being the one who just plants those seeds. And then if someone else is the one who kind of turns on that light bulb for them, that's okay with me. As long as my kids are getting to where they need to be and learning the things they need to learn, I don't have to be the one. And I loved that humility, because
Yeah.
sometimes you want that credit, or you want to be the one who, gets to shine. But I often feel like, you know, I already got a good childhood. Like, I had my chance. Like, now it's my kids' chance. Now it's my turn to step aside in a lot of ways. And that doesn't mean in every way. I still, they know that moms are interesting, and adults do interesting things, and we have our own life outside of them. But there are a lot of sacrifices that we make because it's their turn. It's their chance to have that good childhood that's going to give them that confidence. So when they're my age, they're able to step out in that fearlessness and not be afraid to do things that excite them.
Well, when your friend, that was so beautifully said, but said by an individual who is not insecure,
Yeah.
because it's not about him. It's about his kids. And so he's willing to do whatever. And ironically, by willingly stepping aside, he's actually laying a foundation for their success. So he is
Yeah.
intentionally an active part of not being a part. So uh, that's a good thing. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes humility, doesn't it, to be a parent?
It does. And I mean, for me, I've had people over the years tell me about being a grandparent. Um, I take great joy in the fact that my grandkids know who I am. They know my personality. They know my sense of humor. They actually even know the kind of music I like. Um, and they know that I like Swedish fish. And at Halloween, they kept bags of Swedish fish for me. I love this stage in life. And interestingly, at 64, the fire that burns in my heart for things is hotter and brighter and more intense at 64 than it was when I was 16. And so the joy of living out things that I am still not satisfied. I'm still seeking, for to go further, because when I one day uh, go home to be with the Lord, I want my grandkids to look back and go, "Wow, he really set us up for success." That is the great. Maybe that should be on my tombstone instead of "Here lies Fred, a rock fell on his head." You know, is that here's a guy who opened doors for us. That I think that would be a great epitaph.
I love that. I'll see to it.
In spite of
All right.
the failures.
Thank you so much, Dad, for hanging out with me a little bit today. And I really think this is going to really bless our listeners. I think they're going to get a lot out of this.
Well, I hope so. I just wish for each of you that are listening, what is it that swirls in your heart? What is it that God has just won't let you let go of? Pursue that. Do everything with excellence. Colossians 3:23. Do everything heartily as unto the Lord. So when your day comes and life is over, you look back and you go, man, there was a lot of mistakes I made, but I didn't leave any rock unturned.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Naturally Noelle Show, empowering you to live a more natural life, one step at a time.